Actually, I didn't even end up checking your audio, but we are live. So, welcome everyone back to FPL Script, Season 4, Episode 1. This is FPL Fran, one half of the podcasting team here. We're a little bit late in terms of the season, but I think there's really not too much to talk about. We tend to like to wait and see what's going on. I think reviews gone live as well, fortunately, to sort of support this episode and sort of confirm, I think, a lot of our um I guess like prefacing thoughts on the game and a lot of the changes. So we'll just walk through the major rule changes, which would be double chips and then DEFCON, and then we'll touch on some early kind of drafts that we have. My draft was still the pre-review version of my draft. We'll talk about that in a moment. Shadon's actually got a draft that has a bench boost one in mind, solver approved, with some X-Mens over there. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at the start of the season. How do you feel, Shadon?
Yeah, everyone. So glad to be back for another season. Like Fran said, I just don't know why, but we and to be honest, we have the receipts to prove that we decided to go live before review dropped. So this is just a happy coincidence. But if people want to draw other conclusions, we are fine with that as well. That we decided to stream as soon as review dropped. But yeah, I mean, some of the changes have been fantastic. So looking forward to exploring those. But other than that, I think yeah, I think both of us have some thoughts on the new changes, and we'll get to that. Other than that, I have a standing desk now, so I guess it's it's better for my streaming habits. So that's good.
Are you currently standing?
I am, yes.
Oh wow, okay. I actually have a standing desk, but I'm seated, so that's embarrassing. First rule is double chips. How do you feel about double chips? And I guess ultimately, is it as important as people think it is? And maybe alongside double chips, let's just kind of include the Afcon transfers into this.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. So I think AFCON transfers were wholly unnecessary. I would say that majority of the FPL player base would agree with us, especially those that have been playing the game for some time, because it just takes out all the planning out of it. In fact, it sort of forces you to make transfers, because if you want to get to the stage where you have zero free transfers in order to get five free transfers, it sort of kills the variation. It makes most people make similar kind of moves, so that's completely unnecessary. And then the other bit about double chips, again, like you said, maybe initially I was uh, too reactive in the sense that I did not want them, but from a solving sense, I don't think it impacts us too much. In fact, I would say that having double chips just makes the solving window that much shorter. You don't really care about what happens in the other half of the season, because basically it's one half of the season, and then it's a copy of the first half of the season again. So it's just going to make it, I think, easier. But again, easier does not mean that the edge is still there. I think that's the problem, right? The easier the game gets, or the simpler it becomes in terms of the options you have, it does tend to more grouping in terms of ranking. So I guess that's where the problem is, and that's where the edge is sort of diminished. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe JC made this point, but I kind of subscribe to the idea that the double chips hasn't changed. Um, you didn't really discuss double chips, but yeah, I think I'm obviously pro your thoughts in terms of Afcon, but
Hmm.
I kind of like that because bench boost one just seems so appealing to most people that having those transfers around there might allow you for some different strategies with the coordination of the double chips. And as you said, like maybe if the value of a free transfer is very low around that period, surely that's a good way to kind of cultivate a good bench boost. Because I'm already over complaining about the Afcon transfers, and so I don't have any
To be
thoughts to
honest, I
share on.
forgot about them.
Yeah,
Until you brought it up. I wasn't even thinking about them, because see, that's the thing, right? It's taking stuff, like it's taking the energy out of planning, or sort of solving, because it's so much. I don't know. There's so much liberty around that time period that you don't even need to think about it. It's just gonna come by, and you just need to make sure you don't have any free transfers stacked. That's the only thing you need to take care of.
yeah. You actually have to play the game. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think about double chips?
No, like I said, it's when I think about solving it, like you said, I don't think it has necessarily that kind of impact. The only impact I'm thinking about is from an edge
Mm,
perspective, where um, I guess if you have double chips, they're thinking. I'm trying to think from FPL's perspective, where they're trying to make sure more they retain more players after Game Week 19. So that's I'm assuming that is the reason why they have double chips now. It's because even though you spend one, because most people do that, right? That's how you gain a rank later in the season because most players just blow all their chips in the first half of the season.
yep.
So it's that if when they do blow their chips in the first half, they don't need to feel disheartened because they will still get to use the same chips again in the second half of the season. So
Yeah.
it's I mean I do understand it in a sense, but also like I feel like there are far better ways to keep people engaged and on the website. And I've discussed a lot of them in our group chat as well. Like for example, I feel like they should have all the player news, player injuries, set piece takers, all that information on the FPL website. Also, they could have what UCL Fantasy does, is when the lineups are announced, they should have like an icon of if a player is starting or is benched. Those sort of things I think would keep players more on that website rather than going to third party apps. But I mean, yeah, there are a lot of stuff you can do, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And to be fair, like the point that I was going to bring out that I think JC mentioned was just like the additional chips probably doesn't actually take away much from what the AM produced in terms of like point outcomes coming from chip
Hmm,
strategy.
hmm,
Um, yeah, obviously the like wild cards and whenever you drop them can have a fundamental impact on your like I guess your outcomes,
hmm.
but not necessarily like your I guess EV. So that is probably the more interesting thing I guess. I've quickly run a solve based on. I can't say that I've taken as serious a look at X-Men's as I have in previous seasons because I think there's still so much uncertainty in the preseason. But my
Yeah.
first solve, I just kind of wanted to do, assuming that a lot of people are going to do Wildcard 13, which seems to be a super popular window. I think Praz pretty much popularized it himself, so credit to him and
Hmm,
his video on that. But it makes sense because it's like a window before AFCON where I guess there's fundamental shifts in the game, and so I just ran a solve for all the free hit windows leading up to that. Eval looks pretty strong for free hit 6, which I think a lot of people have already sort of taken into. Free hit Thor, I don't think a lot of people have actually thought about that. So I would need to take a careful look into what that actually means for my drafts because it'd be interesting as I've run some sort of free hit 6 solves already, and they don't look too different from kind of no free hit solves.
hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'll probably look into that. But it's interesting to see that those are the kind of windows that come up, and then everything else kind of pales into comparison after that. So because free hit is something where I think your bench boost, for example, like okay, it impacts your game week 1, but very quickly you can almost like the like the players underpinning the bench boost are quickly not going to be a part of your I guess the importance of your squad. Um,
Correct.
Whereas let's say with the free hit, I think it does quite vastly change the core of your squad sometimes. Like because this is a free hit over a single game week window and we don't expect doubles, which clearly they can still happen. I think the opportunity cost of planning for a free hit now is just if you have these kind of random suspensions like we did in previous years.
Hmm.
Um, which I think like I've seen, for example, Ben Krillin, like his general thoughts are he might hold a free hit. So a lot of people have different kind of thoughts on that. But I feel like I'm most likely going to plan an early free hit. Are you doing the same, or are you kind of flexible and you think there's enough of a chance of crazier things to happen at the start of the season that means we should just hold a free hit anyways?
The, when I looked at the fixes early on, I was thinking maybe it makes sense to hold them because, like you said, maybe there's some uncertainty that comes around later. But also at the same time, when I look at, for example, your solve, I'm currently just as for context, I'm running a solve right now for all free hit wildcard bench boost options. So it's going to take 8 to 9 hours based on what I've seen. The progress is insanely slow, given that there are like 1,200 valid combinations.
Yeah.
So I'll probably post the results of that when it comes around. But from what you said, it does seem like maybe free hitting sooner is going to lock you into a wild card around 13.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Pras is popularizing, right? So maybe that goes or that ties into an early free hit. But also, I feel like maybe keeping it for later is also not a bad strat, given that if you look at your views, you you can see there is some sort of separation, but at the same time, it's going to take like one player with some EV gain to sort of change that, right? So I don't think it's that far apart. But like you said, if you want early EV gains, I think this is going to be the way forward, which is going to be free hit 6 or I don't know. Free hit 4 just makes me feel uneasy for some reason. I think free hit 6 is where I was looking at the team and it made sense to me.
Right.
So did you actually look at the draft for free hit 6 or no?
I looked at the draft for free at 6, but I honestly couldn't tell you dramatically what's the difference
Yeah,
between
that's what I
like
was thinking. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But like you said, I think there are so many X-Men's uncertainties, penalty share uncertainties, and other stuff going on that you don't necessarily have to depend on this right now. It's just a good way of checking what where we are and where we should plan our chips.
Yeah, no, I'm with you to be honest. Um, there's like so many players that are in that territory of having really weird X-Men's, and you have like 2 to 3 more preseason games for most teams anyways to be able to like make better discussion on X-Men. So we'll probably save that for a future episode. But I just thought it'd be, nice to see what the kind of dramatic differences in draws are. I think sadly though, my response would be I generally can't see a thing. It's probably just gonna be one of those, like when I look at the game weeks as well, like in terms of 4 and in terms of 6, I think it's just more so a case of a lot of us just aren't invested into certain teams. Like for example, I don't know, like let's say in Arsenal, it seems like a lot of us are prepared to start the season without them. Even let's say like a Newcastle as well, and then on that's game week 4. In terms of game week 6,
Yeah.
it's probably just targeting once again Man City with a little bit of information, and then conversely probably maybe going a little bit more all in terms of a Spurs and or some Forest players. Because one thing that I've also noticed is I think the Forest players are around the edge of like optimal in terms of defense, but it's not like everyone has to start with that. So if you let's say start the season without Forest defenders, you probably want to pick them up for one of their better games in Game Week 6,
Mm,
things like that. But it just shows you also what happens at the start of the season where people's expectations for single game week free hits just need to be a little bit more tempered. Like you're
yeah.
not expecting crazy gains and maybe 2 to 3 good fixtures and like I don't know plus 8 plus 10 on your team, even plus 12 is already good enough to just lock in some chip strategies. I personally don't like bench boost 1 though, and that's kind of why I've not run a solve for it unless let's say Darlow's available at 4.0 and maybe there's some more kind of value towards the 4.5 to 5.5 forwards, like let's say Beto for example is maybe a good example of that, or maybe if I'm confident enough to start Igor Tiago without feeling too bad about spending the additional 1.5 million,
Mm.
I could consider bench boosting, but I just tend to think there's a lot of value picks that I already know are in the game that I just can't make out yet, and I would rather wait with a little bit more TV down the line, with more transfers down the line, to just set up a bench boost, even if it's going to take maybe a few free transfers. So I'm pretty against BB1, but that's just me.
So I was just looking through the chat, and Brun actually brought up a good point. The free to 4 only pops if Isaac stays at Newcastle. Which, like you said, if you want to target Newcastle, I understand that once Isaac goes, the pen share is going to be redistributed, so you will have other players pop up, and also I think their midfield three is just. I mean, I do understand that we have CBIT stats for all of them, but I mean, I guess Tonali or some maybe even I don't know how to go for 3 players right now, but by that point we will probably know what the front three is, and then that front three could potentially be a good source of EV anyway, even if
Yeah,
Isaac does leave. Yeah,
yeah. Like if Barnes is nailed, like I think I'd still free it for. I
yeah,
don't know. It's still
yeah.
Newcastle versus a really poor team, right? So
It is. Yeah,
um,
true.
I must say I kind of disagree with the logic because it's all about not owning Newcastle players versus owning them. And none of us are
Yeah,
looking to start the season
absolutely.
with them.
Also, so you brought up a good point about Man City, right? I was thinking about why there are no Man City players that are cropping up like for any kind of solve. Like I've tried a bunch of solves like with no chips, with the bench boost one, with free hit six, and I'm not getting a single Man City player to start the season. And I think I think the uncertainty is twofold. I think there's team strength uncertainty, and there's also obviously X-Men's uncertainty. And so a free hit six is probably a good time, hopefully, where we understand at least X-Men's and hopefully team strength as well. But yeah, we'll have to see by that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen Marmoush, but that's because his average mins just feel a little bit too high.
They do, yeah.
Like at the end of the season, I think people kind of might have forgotten, but yeah, like Holland was not available for most of it, and I mean, eventually we saw like Marmoush on the right and stuff because he wanted to play a little bit more Doku on the left, which actually was abysmal. So yeah, I'm kind of cold on Marmoush's minutes to start. And even in the Club World Cup, I don't think there was like a lot of thought around integrating Marmoush into the side whilst also being whilst playing with Holland. I still disagree with Brun's point, Mo, and we shouldn't be interacting with chat, but like Isak TV is not that good because someone is gonna have pen share and there's gonna be good enough players. So, and if they have two strikers with, I mean, it depends. Like if they play 4-4-2, like maybe I'll reserve my thoughts, but
Yeah, true,
I think it's more
true.
likely they still play 4-3-3 and there's one dominant striker and that player is gonna be good, and there's gonna be a player like Gordon maybe with pen share who's really good, and maybe even Murphy as well. But yeah, we'll see. Or
Also, I mean, I
a
might be
defender.
wrong on this because we have Mo in the chat who's an
Yeah.
Egyptian and he's also a Marmoush fan. But I was thinking, like, how is it radically different from the Alvarez, like Julian Alvarez saga, right? I just don't understand. Like, are we going through the same thing again, but with just different position? Instead of playing in midfield, playing on the right wing, I just don't understand. Like, it seems to be going the same way as an FPL asset. I'm pretty sure it might turn out differently um, from an overall player perspective, but just
Yeah.
looking at FPL.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same thing because Pep's unlikely to play with like let's say a striker front two,
Mm,
and he still loves his wingers. So
yeah,
um like all the kind of transfers that they've made still suggest he'll pretty much play the same way. And I mean, like you'll have Marmoush probably in behind, but um
mm,
yeah, like I guess KDB's gone now, which actually helped Alvarez in that landscape. Um But it depends on like whether Foden's any good as well, because he can always just start slicing minutes away from the entire team, bar Holland. And I
yeah,
don't really like Marmoush because of that. Because in theory, yeah, if Foden's playing well, there's nothing stopping Pep from doing something which would be like Holland, Doku, Foden plus Savio slash Silva.
Savio, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like, you could easily have Savio and Doku on the wings, right? And
Yeah,
that just eliminates.
and we're forgetting Turkey as well, who can very much play like middle 10 and like right hand
Yeah.
side, whatever position like Pep really wants to start cooking with. Um,
Mo made a good
interesting in
point.
the Club World Cup, I saw like Reinders play. Like I think maybe he doesn't even play with like necessarily an extremely attacking 10 like Marmoush, Turkey, Foden. Like he might still play Reinders plus Gundo plus Bernardo, which I think I saw in one of the games in the Club World Cup, especially like in the game versus Al Hilal. I think that's what they lined up with, anyways.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of what I don't really love about Marmoush. And so yeah, if you can
So
free hit into Marmoush, I think that's where the value comes from, which is probably
yeah,
why everyone loves free hit six.
I was being kind, by the way. Mo is saying that Alvarez played a lot less minutes, which is what I was thinking, but we have a
Yes,
far less
no, it's
sample
true.
size. So I was, yeah, yeah.
But it's like
Also,
it's very similar in the sense that I think Haaland actually looks like he's gonna get injured quite a fair bit over his career, right? So if you have a
yeah,
player, and maybe Alvarez also was less willing to play wide, or was actually just worse
hmm,
at playing wide. So
yeah, yeah,
I think the only problem is Doku seems to be improving as a player, and then Pep wants to kind of play a bit more of Doku. So that like if Doku wasn't so important to the squad, maybe then you could see Marmoush like be a little bit more free to get more minutes in the team.
yeah. Also, I think all our entire perspective is, I think, a little bit skewed because Rodri hasn't been in the team for such a long time, and so when Rodri comes back, I don't know how it's going to impact everything else around him. With Reinders also in the squad, so basically, like you said, like Alvarez had a lot more scope to play in midfield and stuff. I don't think there is any scope anymore. So it's just basically you have to play on the wing or you have to get benched or wait for Holland to get injured, which is probably going to happen. Hope it doesn't, but yeah, that's probably that.
Yep, I'm with you. But yeah, I think I'll be on free at 6. I
Hmm.
just wanted to just mention free at 4. I don't really know
Like,
why else it would have cropped up. Because I don't think Isak's driving it that much. It must be. I couldn't actually even tell you, to be honest. Because it's also a Salah cap week, as far as I remember.
hmm.
So maybe it's the Crystal Palace players is something that I'm thinking, because a lot of us will probably not start the season with too much Crystal Palace. I think once review dropped, like I can see a lot more people have been like, I am likely to drop my Crystal Palace defender. Can put my hand up on that. I dropped Sar
Did you have
pre-review
Lacroix?
launch. I have Lacroix on my like pre-review
Yeah. Okay.
draft, but I might drop him,
Okay.
right? So if I drop
Yeah.
on my Crystal Palace players, then yeah, I guess that would be also the additional value in Game Week 4 because they play Sunderland at home. So I think
Hmm.
that's probably where the rest of the EV is coming from. Otherwise, I don't know. I think it's also a bad game for Aston Villa. So maybe if you start, let's say, the season with Aston Villa, then it kind of crops up a little bit better. But yeah, let's move on. DEFCON, I think that's changed the game completely. Ironically, I think because of the work that I put into like looking at people's CBITs, like the draft that I kind of ended up with, and like my sort of rough calculations of like EV or like average EV in most cases, like just ended up basically telling me that the 5.5s would just be like better than the 6s from a
Hmm.
value perspective. Um, and I think the thing that's the most interesting about this, as I was saying in the group chat when we were looking at our first solves, is yeah, the fifth defender that you go for, whether it be a 4.0 or 4.5, as long as they're actually good at CBITs, like generally speaking, sorry, let's say DEFCONs, because I think some people get offended.
I was going to say,
Um,
can you at least explain to what CBIT
yeah,
is, right?
CBITs, yes. I mean
Yeah.
CBITs, yeah. I say CBITs, but it's like clearance blocks or blocked shots rather, because
Yeah.
it's not blocks in terms of FBref. It's actually shots blocked in FBref. So if anyone's looking at if they're looking for the specific column of information, it's actually marked by SH.
Hmm.
And then it's also interceptions and recovery. Sorry, no, tackles and just
That is it.
tackles, not tackles won, not
Yep.
tackles lost, just tackles. Tackles just being when you tackle the ball and either you retain possession, which is a tackle won, or um, you don't retain possession, which is a tackle loss, but you still made the tackle. So
Yep.
all tackles count, which I think the main driver of these points will always be clearances, but generally speaking, the more kind of defensively active players will have the rest, right? They'll have the tackles, they'll have the
Yep.
interceptions. So yeah, that has fundamentally changed the game. I also thought it could change rotation dramatically. I still think rotation is very much alive because expected clean sheets do drive a lot of your EV. But it's more so the case now that the ceiling of the kind of mid-table defense type defender who can actually get really good amounts of defensive contributions is probably like almost on par with a team just being really good at defense, like an Arsenal or like Man City. Sometimes, I don't mention Liverpool because I think they're one of the teams like on the edge where they actually are pretty good at getting defensive contributions, probably because they turn over the
Hmm.
ball a little bit more than some of the other teams that I mentioned. But yeah, like Aston Villa is a very good example of a team that's pretty mediocre in defense. They obviously kept a lot of cleans at the end of the season, but they actually never really turn over the ball. So they're not really good at kind of team defensive contributions. But yeah, this sort of additional 2 point element to the game has completely changed, I think, the way we like look at the eighth attacker from the middle position, like the midfield position,
Hmm.
or even the seventh, arguably, because of also the fourth and fifth defender being better than, let's say, our classic 4.5 forwards who never do anything, or the 4.5 defensive midfielder like Harry Winks in previous seasons who
Yep.
generally do nothing, have almost like an average EV of like 2.5 per game. So that's been pretty insane. Um, did you have any kind of thoughts in terms of contributions? And do you like, I guess, the addition of contributions?
Okay. So it was inevitable, right? So I'm not going to say that I love it, but at the same time, I knew it would come sooner rather than later because it's just there was a large section of players in the game who were always excluded, like you said, because their EV was never comparable to viable options. So this is just to sort of level the playing field, but again, okay. So the poster boy for this sort of thing was, I think, always like Caicedo, right? That's the classic example. Earlier would never have gotten, like, most game weeks would only end up with 2 to 3 points, or maybe two because probably gets a yellow card. So his EV is like between 2 and 3 most of the time, and then all of a sudden now he's closer to getting 4 to 5. But I still think that we're going to end up with a player who still has more XA or more XG potential, and so inevitably it's still going to be players who can return, and return in the classic sense of FPL, not in this new sense. So we'll wait and see, but I still feel like most of the players, I think defenders are where we probably are going to switch over from fullbacks to centre backs, because centre backs historically have had lower price, although they've made sure that they've adjusted for CBITs or defensive contributions. So I just sent you a graph in the chat because I forgot that. So what I did was I got the data for every single player event from last season, and I just wanted to check if CBITs follow a normal distribution. And even just from last season, which has like around 4,000 player events, you can clearly see that it's almost exactly mimicking a normal distribution, which is great because now you can just use normal distribution to approximate based on career average how much CBITs. Oh, what is the probability of someone getting the 2 points for defensive contributions?
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
kind of what I think we initially thought, right? When I
yeah,
discussed with you like 2 weeks back. Um, and your point on fullbacks, I think, is like completely taken. It's just that there are some fullbacks that are abnormal in that they're either just like attacking freaks, or they are
oh yeah,
actually
oh yeah,
contributing to genuinely good average defensive contribution numbers. Like Munoz is one of them.
yeah,
Nico Williams, one of them. The
yeah.
Fulham fullbacks are another good example. Like I think Robinson's actually really good, but then there's always going to be the case of whether you want to spend the 0.5 less, and I think that's an issue, right, where Anderson crops up.
Yeah.
But there still might be players like maybe a
You have Poro,
Poro,
right? I mean,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
or
I
Dorgu.
mean,
I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think with Dorgu there is far less data. There, I would be so much more reliant on Poro's historical data compared to Dorgu's, because Dorgu has essentially no historical data that we can back. So with Poro, I definitely feel like his minutes right now on the review are far less than what they should be. But I
yeah,
do understand there should be a sense of uncertainty because of a new manager. I just feel like he has to play most games, which probably means that we should get him in the team.
yeah. And Udoggy's injured anyway, so that's a
Yeah,
nice little pro to the start of the season. What we have here in terms of some graphics produced by yourself, and obviously that's all featured on your Twitter account as well.
yeah,
Is XA per 90, so creative output um, versus defensive contributions per 90. So on the x-axis, sorry, you'll see defensive contributions per 90. And for the midfielders, it's C Brits, right? So you add recoveries to the equation.
yeah. Recoveries, yeah,
Um, and that threshold you really want to look at is 12. But as we said, if you
correct.
follow a normal distribution, someone like Bruno, who appears very high up on both as an outlier, is quite impressive because he still averages a fair amount enough where he's going to get some points added to his total season tally through the Seabrits. Whereas someone, let's say like a Salah, uh, averaging at like something like 4.x, or even a Rogers last
Mm,
season, like to use an example, Rogers was someone who, I think based on this graphic here, he's probably averaging somewhere like 7.5 maybe or less, but he actually had zero additional kind of like hindsight Seabread points to be added. So you can kind of see like how irrelevant so many of the midfielders are in terms of, yeah, if you're averaging around like sub 8, I actually think that's not going to do anything for how many additional points you'll
mm,
get. Obviously there can be some kind of freak game situations, but yeah, like you kind of need to be averaging at least 10 plus to be relevant, and that's where Bruno lies. And then anyone above that is kind of our concentration of a lot of defensive mids or even center mids who therefore do a lot of recoveries and additional actions that create defensive contribution points. So that I think is quite interesting. I mean, who do you think are like the main outliers that in the midfield you'd be looking at shopping? Because obviously, I think all the players that we think are just amazing attacking threats are all in that sort of top left corner of the graphic, or at least very high up on
XA. Yeah.
the kind of y-axis.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, Bruno is the obvious outlier, which is great. As soon as I saw that, I said, okay. I mean, that vindicates sort of my proclivity to go for him,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what the data was saying. But I mean, obviously, the data has to back that. So I'm glad it did. Buende is an interesting case. I think Buende is one of those who, because he's played majority of his games where we do have the data for Norwich and clubs where
Sure.
I don't know, maybe his role was different.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's going to translate into Aston Villa, but I still think he's a highly creative player. So, like I said, uh, that is something I would back more anyway in a player is the ability to sustain creative output rather than trying to get to 12 defensive contributions in a game. And the Rogers point is very interesting, right? So I just spoke about normal distribution, and normal distribution would assume that you have some tail end of outcomes. Is one season of data enough for us to conclude that Rogers is just going to have a uniform distribution rather than a normal distribution? That's the sort of question I'm trying to figure out because we don't have a lot of data for Rogers, right? If we try to go back a couple of seasons, he wasn't even a fixture in that team, and in fact, he wasn't even in the team. If you go
Yeah.
past a couple of seasons, so this is where I am struggling a little bit to use it just willy nilly. But then I feel like we don't have enough data. It could easily be that he clocks 12 plus in one game, then less than 6 in another game, and sort of remain close to his average, which is exactly what we're talking about, right? If you're less than 8, then it's automatically that the chances of you getting to plus 12 plus is going to be marginal as it is. So I'm just struggling with those kinds of players where if you have a pattern that you very obviously see is different from normal distribution, then maybe there is a reason why that is. It's maybe it's the team playing style, maybe it's their playing style. Because again, Rogers is such an amazing dribbler that I don't know if that's part of his playing style, where when he loses the ball, he recovers it, but that's the only time he's going to like get a defensive contribution. So again, it depends on all of that. But as a yardstick, I still think normal distribution is completely fine. It's that
Yeah.
you should not depend on it as much as you would on creative output.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to be honest,
Yeah.
as you were sort of saying, the team dynamic is so much more important. So like I
Mm.
probably would shy away a little bit more from the kind of career numbers
Yeah.
if it looked really off from, let's say, last year's numbers, if the player played significant minutes, because sometimes like, and what am I thinking about here in this example? Like I think um and an NDIA, for example, I think he averaged something like
Mm.
11 last season. So that's a pretty significant jump, to be honest.
It
Um
is.
in terms of how much you're estimating per game. So I think it's interesting. We obviously can't see the outputs of it, but I think when we're seeing him showing up so highly on something like review, it's probably
Mm.
because there's maybe more of a concentration around like the Everton data potentially, compared to maybe like some of his other um historic performances in other leagues. Would that be fair to say, or
No, I completely agree with you. So he came from the Belgian league, right?
uh I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So this is where reviews projections
Or
have
actually,
value,
no,
right?
did he not play for? He played for Marseille, right?
Oh, sorry, my bad. Marseille. Yeah, yeah. Who was I thinking of? Was it Onana?
Probably any
Maybe
of
I was thinking of
Brighton's
Onana.
players.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, okay. So he came from a different league, and okay. So the good thing about these stats is these stats don't include data from lower leagues.
Yep,
So I've made sure that I only include data from
Big Five.
top leagues. No, not
Okay.
Big Five.
Oh, okay. So that
It's
more. Yeah.
the first league in the country. So obviously there are gradations to that. Like Eredivisie, you can have maybe 10 plus defensive contributions very easily compared to getting them in the Premier League or vice versa. It depends on, again, like you said, the team's playing style is going to play a lot more into this compared to any other metric. And as we'll see later on, we have a graphic for team possession versus defensive contributions. We can then, I think, focus more on how we should try to assess defensive contributions based on team play and try to see what data can correlate. That's, I think, a very good open question right now. Maybe Review already has the answer, by the way. I haven't asked him yet. We need to understand what data correlates most with defensive contributions by a player.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And obviously, we're still showing just creativity of players on the y-axis, right? So there's obviously a lot of players here you'd still pick on the midfield position who are gonna like feature with insane XG. And kind
so
of like,
if you look at the graph, I'm glad that it at least shows if you want to like draw a line which has the least square difference, it's negatively correlated, right? So
yeah,
the less creative you are, the more defensive contributions you're likely to get. So that's sort of an obvious thing, and we don't need to expand on that much more. But I just found that interesting.
Next one we have is on forwards, but I think the only thing to point out here is really that Bowen's like the one exception here, because like if you kind of look at the integers that we have on the x-axis for the defensive contributions, I mean, we're looking at 8, right, being a threshold when you actually need to get 12. So it really doesn't matter for the forwards at all. And I think this is also a point that a lot of people might have missed with the forwards, where actually first of all, the forwards were actually got insane price inflation, probably because FPL have just realized that they just dropped way too many like 5.5 to 6.5 forwards that were all like good last season. And I think they've been careful around trying to avoid doing that. And then now your midfielders get rewarded anyways for some of their previous actions, and the forwards pretty much don't, unless they're Bowen or Richarlison. But Richarlison obviously has had stints in previous teams where you'd argue maybe the role in the teams, especially positionally, means he was allowed to get more defensive contributions.
Yeah, I think Bowen is probably, like you said before we started streaming, the only player I would genuinely consider possible of getting those 2 points from defensive contributions. Other than that, it depends on the playing style. But again, maybe someone like Igor Jesus, because we don't have enough visibility on how his role is going to develop. Again, firstly, if he's going to get enough minutes, and then if he gets enough minutes, what his role is going to be. Maybe he's someone to keep an eye out on, because I mean, you can see here he's scoring well on every single metric, right? So it's easy for him to make that jump. But other than that, I'm struggling to see which player is going to be close. And the only reason I put Holland is because I just wanted to see how bad it was, and it is really bad. It's like the bottom left corner of this graphic, which is quite something.
Yeah, fair play. I mean, he's next to Wood, which is good company, right?
Vindication, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of defenders, we obviously take away recoveries from this graphic. So, and also the threshold to get 2 points is 10. So actually, you can see there's so many fullbacks here who just aren't anywhere near what we want. But there are outliers like Nico Williams, Wan-Bissaka here. Although I will mention that last year's numbers were worse. And instead, you just have a litany of basically center backs on this list who will get the job done when it comes to getting that threshold of 10. And assuming a normal distribution, there's obviously ample opportunities for that to happen. Any kind of thoughts? I think for me, when I looked at the defenders, first of all, the immediate driver on a lot of my last season analysis was just how impactful the team is in this sort of, I guess, achieving of the metric based on last season's data. So yeah, like someone like Konsa, for example, who's pretty much played out most of his career in Aston Villa, he's a center back, so we can't just assume he's going to get CBET. He just unfortunately plays for a team that has a lot of control of the ball and then doesn't turn it over too much when they do have it. So it's the same thing with maybe someone like Guardiola or any of the Arsenal kind of center backs. Whereas on the other end of the board, you have like absolute freaks like Murillo and Tarkowski, who clearly individually are very good at all these actions and accumulating them, but their peers like a Branthwaite, like maybe a Nico Williams, for example, are close to them, right, around that territory.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first two names that you mentioned, right? I also think that their per 90 career stats are also affected by them playing fullbacks as well as playing center backs. So it's murky for both Konza and Guardiol for different. I mean, the split is different, but just an interesting side point. Also, Frimpong is very interesting, right? He's played most of his career for a team where he was not expected to be the person. I mean, of course, he's the one who presses because Leverkusen used to press like crazy,
Yeah.
but not necessarily the one who actually wins the ball back. So he would probably press, and then someone else is going to win the ball back in midfield.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that is subject to change. It would be interesting to compare this graph with next season or this visualization with next season and see where uh, most of these players move. And interesting to see based on that. I think we would have more of an understanding, at least in the Premier League, what sort of uh, a role change plays a part in changing the defensive contribution.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like a lot of the outliers here have kind of become outliers because of what they've done outside the Premier League. So I think there's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
huge asterisk there as well.
yeah.
I'm sure Brun must have gone crazy looking at Schmidt here. Um, but yeah, that's like a big sort of prefacing note that I'd say in terms of the attacking appeal of players. But I don't know. I just watched Diouf play football again, and I
Yep,
was pretty impressed.
yep.
So you know,
I was
it's
simply against United, and I
yeah.
was
You watched
telling
him
even my
live with
friend.
your
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
eyes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did, and I would say that that is probably the worst place to watch and reach any conclusions. Like it's such a bad view. Like I was sitting behind the goal, so you don't even like there's no depth perception, right? So you
Right.
don't even know how much they're tracking back and coming back. So that's a little weird. But at the same time, I was feeling like he was just doing pretty well. So it's a shame that I don't trust my eye test at all.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is too is like you look at his like defensive contribution numbers, like he's gonna average more than two, um, and
We
he's
should hope
probably
so.
gonna
Yes.
taper off with the assist. But it's like
Yeah.
he's a bit of a freak of nature. I remember last season we kind of talked about Leaf Davis, right, as one of these kind of like super creative,
Yep.
everything goes through him type players, and he still had some pretty good offensive numbers, anyway. So like, um, because a team like West Ham is most likely gonna still play through him. Like I think I remember actually in the Bournemouth game, in the game versus Bournemouth, like Potter was literally telling his fullbacks to just play high and wide.
Mm.
And so Diouf and Wan-Bissaka both kind of changed their like average positioning as a result of that, and we're just gonna get some value from Diouf, I'm sure. But the problem
Yep.
is, yeah, like do they get C-bits and do we even care? And I think that's kind of the big question that a
Exactly.
lot of people are struggling to
Yeah.
answer. Where probably maybe the answer is no. Maybe we don't care.
Mm.
Unfortunately for the defenders, or yeah, because the problem with the team like West Ham is that their expected clean sheets were never that high to begin with. So it's like you're almost comparing the additional attacking threat versus what was already poor expected clean sheets compared to maybe some other teams who are a little bit more,
Yeah.
better performing in defense. And then if they don't get enough C-bits as a fullback, it's very hard to kind of sell, I think, now the visually good looking fullback like a Night Nuri last season. So
So
um
even if we look at someone like Van Bissaka, right, on this, Viz obviously is pretty high, 9+
mhm.
CBITs, defensive contributions per 90 throughout his career. Obviously, Crystal Palace and United affecting that. If you want to, let's say we use the normal distribution and we get to a value, and then we use a normal distribution and we get to the probability of West Ham conceding 4 goals. The difference between those two is probably going to lead you to the conclusion that the EV boost is not as much as you think it is. So, like you said, it does it matter is I think the key question for most defenders. But I think if you have good clean sheet odds, then for example, like someone like Romero, right? I mean, yeah, I'm all for players like that where if you see them having good minutes, then that's the perfect combination.
Yeah. Do they have good clean sheet odds?
I hope better than West Ham, otherwise they're doomed, right?
Yeah. No, it's interesting because obviously we're seeing a lot of Spurs thrown up by review, but I guess there's probably going to be different models on like how good Spurs are
Mm,
as a team. I know 11-5, for example, like his major differences in terms of the market are as usual, like United and Tottenham
United, yeah.
overestimated by the market, maybe Crystal
Mm.
Palace, Bournemouth a little bit underestimated by the market. On the flip side, things like that. Um, in terms of how they kind of lead up to eventually like our expected clean sheets will be interesting.
Hmm.
So I actually kind of wanted to show my pre-review draft, which I think is actually pretty much review approved, other than Rogers, who I wouldn't even say is like bad per se. He just doesn't really pop the same way that Bruno does. And I think ultimately my conclusion is it's because of the CBITs, right? Like he's just not achieving anything on that basis, and he's not going to get any surplus value there. Whereas like someone like NDI, it does. Watkins and
Hmm.
Solanke, I think. Well, Solanke now, he might not be in my draft just by virtue of him not being ready to play for Gameweek 1. But I think he'd very much be like review approved. Watkins looks very strong. Part of that is pen share, and we'll talk about Watkins pen share maybe in a moment. Do we want to talk pen share today, or should we save it for another episode?
So like we said, I think we'll
Yeah,
have more of an idea for next week, because I also think it's better to have some sort of viz where you can just talk through them. And
yeah.
for most teams, we already know it, right? I think Arsenal is probably going to be the big one. Where is it going to be Gyökeres? Is it going to be Saka? Stuff like
Mm.
that. So we can probably go through it next week. That will be a good talking point.
Yeah, and I think maybe we even come to the episode with literally like what our 100% of pen share is.
True.
And we'll
Yeah.
see if we can actually agree on that before we
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
episode. But yeah, like I think Anderson, I kind of realized he just kind of rotates well with some of the other CBIT monsters, like on their off
Mm.
games, especially game week 4 and 5, which are bad games for Forest and Everton respectively. Virgil, I was kind of concerned because I think his CBIT numbers aren't great, but he's got a big head and he gets expected clean sheets more than other people. But it seems like he's not necessary. And I think one thing I'll say is when you look at the expected points per match from
Yeah.
all these types of players, like someone like Rogers is not necessarily. I wouldn't dare say he's suboptimal because I think they're all on a kind of edge where they're like somewhere between 0.53 to 0.58 xppm, and very small things can drive that difference or bring that back for you. Like Rogers will play 90s over some of the people who might be on 80 minutes, like an NDI, for example, but could be subbed
Mm.
off in some matches at 72, 70, whereas Rogers should be playing 90s. In the case of Virgil, of course, I think the big issue is that the 5.5 just overperforms. So like most solvers now won't really see the need to own someone like Virgil because of that. And I guess with Lacroix, like I don't know, that very well could just be Chris Richards, but I think Chris Richards is very much like an option that shows up within a lot of my solves. Sanchez, I find he's like very very good, but I also have confidence that Sanchez won't get rotated like he did at various points in last season. Whereas if he does get rotated, obviously he's just a stupid pick. But I think if you actually trust Sanchez being a nailed on goalkeeper, he's probably still better than Raya in terms of like efficiency, right? Because
Yep.
what you tend to notice with a solver now, unless you're on a bench with one solve, is it's totally comfortable going for a 4.5 forward because the forwards don't really. I think they probably are the least efficient position in the game. But it seems like the solver's now going back towards the stage of, hey, we get value from the 4.0s, the 4.5 defenders. Just throw out a formation that consistently gets out points and just play people who are pretty much fixture proof, like a Bruno, like a Watkins, at least with his opening run, that kind of thing, to start the season with, and forget about having a deeper bench like we used to have.
Yeah, but I think isn't that a consequence of us playing with X-Men, right? Because
Is it?
you had to tank, let's say, for example, Visa,
Mm-hmm.
Solanke. I'm trying to think of whose
But
mints I tanked.
sorry, just to cut you off, but like, would you not
Yeah.
have gotten a 4.5 forward, even if
No, no,
Wisa
no,
was
no.
available?
I'm saying that you were talking about 4.5 million defenders, right? So I
Yeah.
think those come into play because the smaller the pool of forwards is, the more you're forced to go for someone like Watkins and then another player at not the best price point.
Hmm.
So that automatically means that instead of getting Virgil, you have to go to someone like um, Romero or even lower than that. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, would the solver not automatically adjust for that just because you are annually shrinking the player pool of choices?
Maybe, but I think part of it too is like it's like Watkins gets you more points spending the additional like 1 million, I guess, then let's say Virgil
Oh
would
yeah,
if
yeah, for
you
sure. Yeah. I'm not denying
yeah.
that. I'm just saying that maybe it's also. I'm saying that if you were to run a solve without changing any X minutes, there could be a possibility that you still end up with someone like Virgil, not Virgil, because I ran
Well, no,
solves
but keep in
without.
mind that this draft that I
Yeah,
have has Rogers as well, right? So the solver is actually like
oh,
asking
fair,
me to spend
fair.
more money on
Yeah.
someone like
Okay.
Bruno instead,
Yeah, of course,
probably
of course.
because
Yeah.
it thinks you
No.
can spend more money on the attacking positions, and then I
Hmm.
guess like the 4.5 plus, because like I mean this draft that I have actually has deeper defense than like let's say what I'm getting my souls, right? Like my souls right now
Hmm.
actually look like 4.0, 4.5.
Hmm.
So like Lacroix would be a 4.0 in this case, and Virgil actually would be a 5.5 or maybe a 5.0, like
Hmm.
a Romero, for example.
Hmm.
But he could equally be Porro because, as you mentioned, his minutes are like very, very low in reviews. So, like,
Right.
I just tend to think that maybe the reason why that is just yeah, it just thinks just full send the best team possible generally,
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and then like defensive contributions will kind of like clean up whatever disgusting bench weight you
Hmm.
have. Because yeah,
Also, I'm thinking like, for example, if you set free transfer value at more than 3,
mm-hmm.
there could be a possibility that someone like Virgil would show up. I'm very curious. I might run that solve myself
That's
to check.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, because if the more you value a free transfer, the more the possibility that you would want someone with EV across the horizon and not just the first 6 weeks or first
yeah. I
eight
don't I
weeks.
don't even think it is that now because I think like well because I think the thing that's like quite scary is like someone like Munoz, for example.
Hmm.
You know, he'd probably show up and over like that horizon because like what I'm actually seeing now is like oh yeah, instead of going Pedro Porro, or maybe you go Pedro Porro first, then you actually go Munoz, um, because like maybe those are kind of slightly tougher games for a team like Everton in the past are now just like actually good games because maybe the opposing team actually will guarantee an extremely high chance of like Tarkovsky getting 2 points for a match, which then suddenly kind of like is much better than Virgil's mediocre game, really low XCS
Hmm.
versus really high game, really high XCS. And yeah, like I tend to think actually the 6.0s have more sporadic kind of outcomes or like predictions. And then like I think you can actually see that through like a Gabrielle potentially. Versus maybe like someone who's like really high in Seabread who might have like one bad match like in a while, right? But like if Tarkovsky's the face off versus Liverpool, that's just inherently a bad game for him. He's not going to get value from that. Um, but generally he's more like someone who hugs like 4 points per week,
Yeah, I see
a,
what
a,
you mean.
a bit
Also,
a
like
bit more than he
Liverpool,
used to. Yeah,
yeah, the Liverpool game now also. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's more psychological, but instead of 0 points, you could get 2 points now. That's probably
true.
like the median outcome.
That's a good point. Yeah, you just have like a really nice floor. Like Munoz is
Yeah.
probably the best. He probably has the best ceiling now in the game.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure. Yeah.
so but he'll still have bad games, and I think that's the interesting thing. Um, yeah, because I don't know if you saw the projections, but like Saliba, for example, is like just below the 5.5s flat out. Um,
Oh, okay.
like
That just.
for
I mean, wow. Okay.
like over a 12 game week run,
Mm.
over yeah. So
Oh, and you know what? So it's very funny. I looked at, like, for example, Arsenal defenders are very poor in defensive contributions per 90, right?
yeah,
In metrics that we are using for FPL. So it's so unfortunate because most of their work is coming in recoveries. And if you're not going to
yeah.
count that, it's going to be very difficult for them to actually get to 10 plus.
I noticed that
So,
too with the fullbacks as well. Because like someone like Wan-Bissaka is actually really good at
mm,
recoveries,
yep,
but
yep,
like he's not getting rewarded for that. So there's clearly like a choice in terms of pricing the game and pricing players to
correct.
like not put recoveries into the defenders. I think, even though we thought it was a bit random at first.
Oh, also could be just to differentiate from UCL Fantasy where it's just ball recoveries
That's true.
everywhere,
Actually,
right?
they've deliberately chosen the one stat that UCL kind of lives off of.
Yeah,
Um, all right. Um, but yeah, I think what I'm like in terms of any takeaways I've had from my own solves, it's yeah, like I see a lot
yeah.
of Bruno, but I also think if people are like want to go off of Bruno, I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world. It's just one of those cases where you're probably potentially going like you're intentionally creating, I suppose, what would be a suboptimal draft for for the sake of it, but I think over a 12 game week horizon, you'd probably maybe only lose like maybe 2 EV, which I think,
Hmm.
like that's choice at that point in time. You
Oh yeah,
can,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
So
eval score is going to be even less than that, right? You're talking about 2 EV across 10 weeks.
yeah,
With DK, that's not even going to be like maybe one or even less than one, I think, for the eval score. So that's just preference at that point.
yeah. But let's see, because obviously one of the Bruno things, and it's something we discussed as well last night. Where is it the case where if he plays more center mid this season, we actually dislike Bruno more, um,
Hmm.
or actually it's okay because his XAG pretty much stays flat across positions, and then I guess you're just praying for penalties at that point sometimes with him. But then he'll also get you the +2 here and there.
Did someone in the group chat bring up the point that because Kuna and Imbu are now playing, we might have a chance at least, you know, winning a few more penalties? I feel like
I
that. I
said
mean,
that. I just said that because I actually
oh, you
generally
said that.
believe
Okay.
that. Yeah,
No, no, no.
yeah.
See, I think there is some merit behind it, but the season where United won a ton of penalties under Ole with Pogba, Martial, and Rashford, and everyone just started talking about how dribbly players is correlative to winning penalties.
Mm,
And after that point, United, I don't think United won more than 4 penalties in a season or
yeah,
something ridiculous like that. So uh, either way, I just feel like, of course, we're going to be more attacking than we've been in a while, but I don't know how much. Again, also one thing that might be the case for this season is due to lack of European football, Bruno might actually end up again playing 90s for most of the season,
true.
which I don't want him to if we have European competition. But if we
Right.
don't, then there's no reason for him to rest. So that might actually help him out.
Very fair point. Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah.
This was your draft, right? Which was a bench boost one. But this is like an output of
Uh,
a solve. Do you want to just walk us through it?
yes. So I'm just to start off. Let me say that I am not at all keen for bench boost one after what I saw. And this is a draft that I got after changing minutes for most players. I did not change penalty share for a lot of players. I did change it for players like Xhaka and Watkins, and I'm trying to think of other players, but those two come to mind where I did make sure that I changed the penalty share. But yeah, I did not tinker with Giyu's minutes because you have him in your draft because obviously that spot is a dead spot most
Yep,
weeks, so
it is.
it doesn't matter. And before you bench boost, you will obviously take care of that position. Either way, right? If Giyu ends up playing a lot of minutes, perfect. If he doesn't end up playing a lot of minutes, you'll transfer him out before the bench boost. So I think you're hoping for the former, but either
Pretty
way,
much.
yeah. So for my draft, I mean, the defense is pretty okay. I mean, you could go with this sort of a defense even if you're not bench boosting. I feel like the four that are starting. But again, Esteve is someone that is completely like review backed. Also, in the graph that I shared, or rather we shared in the pod, Esteve does show up pretty high on defensive contributions per 90, but I think his XA is pretty low. If you want to go back to that for a second,
Yeah, he
I
sits
think
here at the kind of
yeah,
8.x range. Yeah.
exactly. So his um, we are actually hoping for defensive contributions and not a lot else from him. So I don't know. It's just, and also Namich, Brun pointed out to me in the group chat that he might not even start. Piro might start instead of him. So there's a lot of uncertainty in this draft. And what this draft made me realize is that I really don't want to bench boost in game week one because I was thinking this is the one season where you probably could get it out of the way because you get another bench boost anyway for later. But looking at this, also Fran brought up a good point earlier before we started recording, which is Sanchez and Raya just seems like a huge waste of money. Having them together from game week one, when you don't have a lot of wiggle room and you're trying to get money out of every position, it just feels like a huge waste of money. And it feels like you start off behind everyone else for no reason other than just to get rid of the bench boost, which I don't know. I mean, again, you have more a concrete EV because it's game week one. So it might look good even on paper, but you don't even know what the horizon is going to bring. So it's just, I think there's just a lot of uncertainty with that. Other than that, I think I'm fine with the other picks. Like I know you pointed out that Bruno is like an edge case where you could choose to forgo him and instead
I,
try to boost other positions.
yeah, I mean
Uh,
it's not an
yeah.
edge case really. Like it if you trust, I guess, the outputs of review, it's like a pretty bad decision, I guess, on like to go without Bruno. But like,
No. But I'm saying, like,
yeah,
let's say you boost minutes other players, and you're pretty much
mm,
spot on with X-Mins. I think there could be a draft which would compete with a Bruno draft, not necessarily with Rogers, with someone else maybe. That's what I'm trying to get at.
yeah,
So
maybe,
yeah,
maybe,
yeah, because 9 million is a lot, right? I mean, come on, we are starting the season, and
yeah,
especially if you're trying to bench boost, it is a lot of money for one player, and so especially with the initial fixtures, right? I mean, my God,
they are
it's
poor.
terrifying.
Like they are
Yeah,
poor.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And just for anyone, there's a game going on right now, United Everton, and the front three is Kuna, Mbumo, and Bruno. So we might have more conclusions based on how that goes and how the average positions of each player turn out to be. So we'll see what happens there. Also, Ahmad is playing, so that's, I think, our best. All our best attackers are playing at the same time, which is excellent. So, but see, even with all of that, right, we have four midfielders in common, which I feel like, again, the pool of midfielders is going to be so narrow to
yeah,
choose from that that's very disappointing to see at the start of the season.
yeah, yeah. I think that the scary thing is Palmer is that good, and we
Yeah,
expect
he
him to
is.
be better
He
than
is.
Saka.
He
And
is.
I think it's like probably the thing with Bruno is that always just going to be about how believable those projections are for his like
Hmm.
open play numbers. Well, obviously it factors in pens and set pieces and stuff, but like
Hmm.
just like how, how many goals and assists you'd expect over like a 12 gaming period or 14 gaming period or whatever.
Hmm.
And then yeah, like that Anderson spot, he could be a 5.0 DM, he could be a 6.0 kind of DM like Tillemans,
Hmm.
who I think a lot of people have already sort of started to.
Warm up too.
Yeah, I'm not super sold on Tillemans, but there's
Yeah,
NDI
because it's
and
all based on the pen share, right?
it is
Let's not
because
pretend
yeah, you,
otherwise.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
spend that additional 0.5 unless you were kind of certain that that pen share was real, and I personally just don't think it is. So I kind of feel like
I
why
agree.
not just go with Anderson? But there's other 5.5 mids, right? Like Reinders, like Malin. If their minutes are good, they're good.
Hmm.
Uh, and then in NDI's case, like his numbers are a bit freaky, if I have to be honest. But also, like, if he gets early substitutions, that actually has like knock-on impacts on like the CBIT numbers as well, right? Because
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
the way we
Yeah.
do the normal distribution with the CBITs, it's like assuming someone plays 90, you know, kind of,
Good point.
and
Because
yeah,
the graph I
exactly.
generated was only instances of players that played 90 minutes. So that's a very good point. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so when we take those CBIT numbers and then kind of retranslate them to
Yeah.
how
Scale
many
them down.
CBITs they get over the
Yeah.
season, it actually does get a bit
Yeah.
nerfed if you're like an open play player like NDI and maybe you don't play
Yeah.
the full 90. So yeah, just a thought to share. But all right. We wanted to kind of give an ode to maybe a legendary Premier League player,
Hmm.
Heung-min Son, who I think departed Spurs today almost.
Yeah.
Played his last game, stays in Korea, whilst the rest of the team goes to London with Madison and his unfortunate injury as well, which we will also add.
Ah.
But who I think should also be on this list, right? Madison's always been a good finisher. And
Yes, I just missed labeling him because I
I
think.
think we see him there at 1.15.
Oh, you do? Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just saw him.
he's
Yeah,
right
yeah,
next to Ahmad Diallo, who scored a
yeah,
hat
yeah.
trick for
It's
Sheffield
sort
United.
of merged. Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean,
Chances.
Son, last season I published this exact graphic. Minus, I don't think I had shots for 90 included, so the
Mm,
dots just were not different. But again, I mean, Son has, it always used to give me solace that watching Son play actually matches up so well with what we get
yeah.
season after season.
As long as you don't
And
include last season, but yeah.
oh yeah, my God. No, I just meant from like a
Yeah,
finishing point of view.
I'm
Like
just kidding.
every time, yeah, no. Son in a one-on-one, Son cutting in from the left. It's just it's almost a given certain outcome. And again, Messi is the ultimate freak when it comes to finishing, but on a more human scale, I think Son is probably the best finisher we've seen in the Premier League, at least since expected data has been available.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Very true.
yeah.
Where does Kane feature on this?
So did I do the graphic with Kane? That's actually a great question. I might just do it for just
I
to see where Kane
yeah.
ends up.
Because
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
had a bit of a discussion with Jordy as well, because I
yeah.
think I remember he posted a tweet about how he thinks Kane's like the best ball striker he's seen, or like
Hmm,
I guess like yeah, decision maker in terms of like the shots that he takes. But
hmm.
I was curious because I don't have like the data for like players like Suarez and etc. So couldn't really compare like the lifetime ones. But yeah, Kane is definitely one. But yeah, Son's like in a world of his own, a great player, and he's 33 now, so it shows how insane it is what Salah's doing, right?
Hmm.
So we have like another Premier League great who we don't think can quite sort of match the level at his sort of age now, and you still have Salah pretty much going uh perfectly. And
But I'm just saying, like Holland, every single time I generate this graphic is just insane to me.
yeah,
Like how much of an outlier this guy is.
yeah,
It's crazy. It's just no one. I mean, again, it's Messi territory, right? It's you have to only go back to someone like Messi or even Ronaldo when it comes to NPXG. But
yeah.
there is going to be a very few select number of players who are going to be in that sort of bracket.
Where is Calvert-Lewin here? He's not even.
Yeah, because he's not in the player list.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Last
but
season, if you
yeah,
remember, the bottom three players were all Everton
yeah,
players.
yeah.
Now we have Patrick Bamford, who is, my
Who-
God, is he a bad finisher? I mean, my God,
what is that?
what?
Yeah.
No way, bro. It's just such a shame. Yeah. And I saw Joao Pedro, which was, I mean, I don't remember if I ever saw him before
Hmm.
being so low on this,
So negative.
but I feel like he'll probably improve given that I don't think he could probably get a better sample size the more
Yeah.
he plays regular minutes. So hopefully that'll be an upturn
Yeah,
for
and
him.
I guess he makes up for it with his absurd pen record. That can't
True.
be reflected here. So
Yeah,
um
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, like I think someone mentioned Fulkrug. I'm not sure if he's here that I could quite see.
Uh, Nor do I.
Probably not a
I think it's
massive
because,
outlier in any sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like, for example, you were talking about Malen earlier, right? Malen
Yeah.
is like a good example of, like, of course, it's career data again. You have to factor in team tactics and stuff. But you can see like he's pretty much an outlier from like the midfield, where he's like in the top right corner, and also he's getting a lot of shots
Yeah.
per 90, which is exactly what you want.
Yeah, very fair.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the list. Anything you'd like to mention as we close on this graphic?
Oh, Evanilson. Yeah. Just
Hmm.
because I saw him play live, and that's like from last season. He's one of my only good players in FPL. So when I saw it, I was like, okay, fine. This guy is going in the right direction. Hopefully, the NPX per 90 moves towards the right, further towards the right.
Yeah. It's interesting seeing some players like Watkins as well, right? Who everyone knows
Mm.
is like I think a lot of people in their minds think he's a slightly poor finisher, but I guess maybe an open play it's a separate argument. Um,
Also,
he's just
no, I think headers make up for that, right? I think someone
true.
mentioned that about Shesko, where if you're getting a lot of headers and you score, let's say, more than the usual amount,
Hmm.
that's going to boost your finishing a lot.
That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't actually think
Yeah.
about that, but that's
Mm.
fair. All right, cool. Let's have a look at the next graphic here. And you wanted to just show this graphic for a specific reason, so why don't you just walk us through it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there's only one reason I already posted about it. It's Elliot Anderson. And if this graph doesn't convince you why you should get him in your team, I don't know what will. I guess reviews expected value will. But I think these two things should be enough to have him in the team. Again, the only reason I have also, not in this one, but in the other graph, I have included. Oh, so did it get cut out? The min scale, right? There is a minute scale, I think.
E there probably is,
I
yeah.
think there is. Yeah, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. The only reason I brought that up is because to show that he is not playing 90 minutes per match. So you have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
So maybe they won't. be as high as the per 90 numbers, but it's still an incredible amount, and also you can see that he's not a dud in terms of creative action. So I think that's the perfect combination.
Yeah. Plus, also once you factor in recoveries, like he might actually be even more of an outlier. Because I was actually looking at like recovery per 90 data, and he seemed to be like really good on that as well. Um,
Hmm.
but most like kind of CMs or defensive mid types are kind of like that. So
Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, that's the. I mean, if we just go back actually for a second, I mean, once again, it's another graphic to sort of pedal Bruno. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
But this doesn't include recoveries, by the way, just as an
yeah,
aside.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So team possession versus defense contributions. You want to walk us through why you've created this and like maybe what you're thinking going into it and what you've learned, I guess, coming out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the methodology, the data gathering methodology. What I did was I went through all the player events from last season. So basically, a player playing a match is an event. So essentially, all players playing every single match that they did in the Premier League last season. And then I also got the data for how much possession their team had, what was their team's XG, what was the XG against, and there was a bunch of other information like the team formation and stuff like that. But obviously, that you can really draw conclusions from that. So what I did was I used team possession and I tried to plot it against defensive contributions of that player in that game. And I did this because I was going through X and I found, I think, a post by Opta or someone, one of those data providers, where because FPL brought defensive contributions into the game, they had tried to correlate team possession with how many defensive contributions you make or something of that nature. But they had far less data than what I'm showing here. So I was just curious to see if there is a correlation between how much possession your team has and if that correlates to how many defensive contributions you get. And so by the nature of this graph, which is literally all over the place, you can clearly see that that's potentially not the case. Also, there is a color scale. And so the deep blue part of the color scale is if your team has positive XG difference. And the deep red of the scale is if your team has negative XG difference. So I've also used that just to show that if a team was being dominated in terms of chances, or if they were dominating in terms of chances, so instead of getting a correlation between defensive contributions and team possession, what I found was at least loosely you can correlate a team XG difference with team possession, which
Mm.
is, I mean, it's kind of obvious. If you keep more of the ball, you create more chances, you
Yeah.
get more XG. So yeah, that was quite disappointing. I was hoping to get some more insights. I do think that Fran has a lot of interesting points about this, which I think I mean you should talk about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's more like within this graph, right? Because it's like individual team possession. It's always like I think
Yeah.
what I've seen from some of the graphics as well as just like let's say a team like Liverpool, a good example of that. They're extremely right hand side dominant. So even though they might actually have really good possession, they don't really turn the ball over a lot. It's still a really good game for whoever's the left back of the opposing team, as we've learned, to just play up against Salah and his peer, right? And
Mm.
to rack up like CBIS within individual games. So there's definitely some trends, and I think as you kind of said at the start, there's going to be it'll be interesting to see like what reviews probably found in terms of like what's correlative and stuff on
Mm.
CBIT. Another thing too, I think, is the team numbers for CBIT are always like for me like a good starting position to just understand whether like an individual can sort of like perform well, but it's 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 tough. Like I tend to think a lot of the teams high up in the CBITs also tend to give their opposing teams like CBITs as well, but that's like a circular thing as we mentioned. It's just
Mm.
like a logical thing where I don't know, like if I'm turning over the ball a lot and back to the opposing team, like in theory I'm giving myself an opportunity to do that again,
To win it
right?
back. Yeah.
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 So
Exactly.
um I
Oh,
think
also,
what is
sorry,
go
Fran.
on.
Another thing I forgot to mention was that I've only used instances of when a player has played 90 minutes. So it
True.
does not include all other instances. So to your point earlier about a team's defensive contributions, that would help us because it means that regardless of which player plays how many minutes, you're looking at 990 minutes across the board.
True. Yeah.
because you cannot have, or 900 because let's exclude the goalkeeper. So 900 minutes across the board. It doesn't matter unless you have like a head injury or something after you make all the substitutions and also you use your concussion sub and stuff like that. So there are rare exceptions, but I think you'll have a much better idea because you could use more data points. You could use every single game rather than just use certain instances of where a player has played 90 minutes.
Yep. Apparently Arias scored a goal today, by the way. So
Who?
obviously, John Arias for
Oh,
Wolves.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
As they proceeded to get hammered by Girona, but
Oh, damn.
yeah. No, I mean they lost 2-1. But no, I think like with the numbers that we've seen so far, and the reason why we spent so much time on DEFCON is because it is just that strong, and I think we just need to kind of slowly adjust our eyes to it almost. Not in terms of like go watch a football game, look for DEFCON, but just like your approach to what is a good value asset within the game,
Mm,
what is a good looking draft, what are good players that I want to have, and like what are the budget pieces that I'm sort of filling my team with. And like I've probably had to sort of readjust that mentally as well. Like when I looked at a 4.0 being suggested by a solver, I was
yep,
like, what is
yep,
this?
yep.
um Especially since I already had a 4.5 forward within the draft. So it's little things like that.
Yeah,
um
it's a huge mental shift, right? So I was thinking, and again, this is such a perfunctory point where the perception of points is going to drastically change, as in because of all the chips in play as well. So in previous seasons, if 2500, 2600 was a great tally, 2600 might not even get you top 1 million this season. So that's just, we have to adjust to that reality.
yep. But I think we could jump into a little bit of Q&A. Why
Mm,
not? Um, Quite a few interactions in chat, so thank you guys so much for being around from the
yeah,
top.
thank you.
Maybe I'll try and brush through as much as I can. So Mo, Marky, nice for you to join us. Flapjack as well. JH, Luther Bliss as well. Can't be a scripted episode if you don't say DB is washed. I just said it.
DB is
Um,
washed.
Flapjack with the standing desk gang. Fries No Shake says just put Mbomo and Cunha in the team. I still won't do it because no penalties. And actually, you've probably watched some of the United friendlies, right? Has Bruno given set pieces to Cunha so far?
No, Bruno's the one who's taken them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot is kind of being stripped from these players. And even if you
True.
think open play they could do better, which would be shocking because Mbomo had a freak season last year. So did Cunha, to be honest. I think I made a joke about
Both
how
of them. That's crazy, bro.
yeah,
We just were
no,
depending on
I
them
made a joke
having
about how
another freak season.
the transfer
Insane.
strategy was just signing up whoever had the most like over
Oh yeah,
performance
yeah.
outside of Wood obviously. But let's see. Actual chat messages that we can respond to in terms of questions.
Yeah.
Other than Melt saying mute Fran. FPL Chip Assist Man says review as Marmouche and Reinders and Soul with time decay. Yeah, but I think the issue is that that's because Marmouche's minutes are, for me, still way too high.
Exactly. That was, I was going to bring
I
that
do
up.
think Reinders could be optimal, though. I think I think Reinders could be amazing.
Minutes, right? Yeah, minutes.
Bruno
If
apparently
I
has scored a
know,
penalty goal. Come on, mate, get in my draft. Yeah, I've never
Bruno, Bruno,
I've never liked
Bruno.
I've never liked Rogers. Who is he? Let's see. Hardware says, "Hey guys, any opinion at Big of the Back?" Yeah, I think our thoughts are very much consistent with what we said, right? So I think Big of the Back, I think is true to an extent where actually the 5.5s are better than the 6.0s, and they're your big options outside of let's say Virgil and Gabriel with maybe an extremely good run that we can't ignore. But I think the reality is Arsenal don't have that run, Liverpool don't have that run either, so you don't really have to consider that. But does it make sense to probably have like 2 to 3 5.5 options in your team? Yes. And then have that be supplemented by some really good 5.0 4.5 options potentially? Yeah. I think the scary thing is that they've almost made the 4.5s and 5.0s like really strong. Like an Joachim Anderson, who's really good at defensive contributions, but then also plays for Fulham, a team last season who actually were one of the best defenses in the Premier League, and we don't expect them to underperform so much in terms of clean sheets this season. Like he's just going to be an amazing pick. So yeah, like I think even though we're spending less, like it's probably actually just the case that Anderson's underpriced, right? That maybe Robinson even is underpriced. So yeah.
Mm.
Someone said reviews pretty cold on Nottingham Forest defense. I don't think they're cold. Like I've still seen options pop up. I think maybe actually the opposite way of going about that is I actually think they're extremely high on Tottenham defense
Hmm.
potentially.
Yeah.
But I've still seen like Nottingham Forest options on on my solves. It's just that if you actually look at Nottingham Forest's defensive numbers last season, I don't think they're as impressive a team as we'd usually think. Right? They're just actually
Hmm.
quite I want to say mediocre, and I'm going to say mediocre. Yeah, they're
Oh, they are.
mediocre.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
They are.
Anish says, which Forest defender should we go for? I kind of like Nico Williams because I kind of think he satisfies all criteria. And if you can save 0.5, why not? ABX123 says, I'm on the 4.5 goalkeeper budget, current Areola. He only faces Chelsea and Arsenal before he wildcards Gameweek 13. I mean, yeah, interesting point on the goalkeepers. I do think the 4.5s are too bad this season to compete. Like, Verbruggen might be the one. Like, I don't think there's much separating it because Verbruggen might not even start the season because he's injured. Ariel is quite good. Petrovic is quite good. Kelleher is quite good. But I think they're actually maybe just not as good as Sanchez potentially. Um, in the sense that I think if you kind of look at the expected clean sheets at the sort of 5.0 position, the 4.5, 4.5 team isn't great. The league code, we
Hmm.
need to update that in the future. But yeah, the 4.5, 4.5 is much worse. 4.5 standalone, I think the defenses are probably too bad. Like we think Brighton might be the one team that I think could actually buck that trend because they're actually quite good. But then like Bournemouth, we talked about their defense is sort of capitulated on itself. I'm not sure if I'm in love with everything. And then also the changes in terms of saves, I think also kind of reduces the value of the 4.5s a bit more because
It does. Yeah.
yeah, like right now you're kind of getting more taxed. Like honestly, if you concede a lot of shots in the box, you know that's a bad
You're going
team.
to concede. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. This is so correlative. I mean,
yeah.
it's not even funny.
So it's like it's kind of worsened actually, like the Brentford type goalkeeper, because it's like
Yeah.
yeah, well, unfortunately. So I still think
Connor,
your Chelsea's or Arsenal's are probably the best way to go about it. I don't think Sells is tremendously far off. Would I trust in Vicario? Probably not with my own life.
hmm.
Um, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with goalkeepers. But I don't think there's anything. I think you can just if you really want to go 4.5 and that gets you the draft that you want, nothing wrong with that, as ever. You know,
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, historically, we've seen very rare instances of premium goalkeeper coming out on
actually
top
being the top
as
goalkeeper, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's just that it's such a lottery, right? You never know
it
who's going
is.
to be that guy. Like it was Amy Martinez a few seasons ago, Pickford last season. It's just so up in the air. So yeah, it's just pick your poison and go with it.
Yep, I'm with you there.
Connor's in the chat. Hi, Connor. I don't know if he's still there, but
Hi Connor.
thanks for joining.
Matoma is someone 6.5 shows her an NDI, and I think they're close actually. I think Matoma's
Yeah.
numbers look good. It's also a case of like are Matoma's minutes perfect because sometimes they're not. Like in a very weird way too. Like when there's international breaks, his minutes fall off a
Hmm.
cliff sometimes. I just kind of find that is stuff I don't really love about Brighton. Um, Marco hit a 180, so congrats to him. Um, Thoughts about Pat Sar? I'm not sure his numbers are good enough, really, on
Yeah.
Schubert's. The DEFCON numbers actually aren't as good as you would probably think. And then, yeah, okay, the Madison injury might kind of help if they kind of play 4-2-3, but I'm not totally in love with him. The pro to him and Granit Xhaka is that they're 5 million, right? So if you actually have a lot of
Correct.
confidence in their minutes, they're actually possibly quite good. Diouf, we talked about him. I actually think he's better than Wan-Bissaka. So maybe if we were to actually think that he is going to get some good DEFCON numbers, like he's not the worst pick in the world. But yeah,
Hmm.
like obviously in the chart we saw he was averaging sub 2, but that's because he played different positions. His
Hmm.
role in West Ham is going to be tremendously different. So, and that's kind of what
Yeah.
we were talking about, where the team thing will probably kind of like set your baseline for averages, and then actually your own individual proclivity to getting some of these numbers is gonna influence the rest of it. But
Yeah.
he might be good. FPL Impulse says not sure if he can agree a bench boost one. It's only a problem if you have to have Salah, go Salah to a Wirtz, and the team is so much better for bench boost and beyond. I disagree for beyond. maybe
Yeah.
I could agree with you potentially on game week 1, but by taking Salah off, you're actually, if let's say you go Salah to Wirtz and you don't go Haaland, I think the issue actually when I was looking at the kind of captaincy rotation, generally speaking, is you miss best captain game week 1, best captain game week 4, best captain game week 5. So that's like 3 weeks where you're probably opening yourself up to what wouldn't be a
Just
lottery
losing
anyways.
EV, right?
It's like
Yeah,
just losing EV against the
absolutely.
field where it's like 180% EO Salah on those weeks, and it
Yep.
probably is going to be quite painful because you're going to be fighting him with Palmer, who has some inferior weeks, or even Wirtz, who clearly has inferior weeks. Like
Mm,
part of it too is like if you look at, like, let's say uh just the projections on Liverpool players, right? Like Wirtz is nowhere near Salah.
no.
Uh, on any model, on market,
Also
on
because
anything.
like we discussed, right? Like just like Kuna and Mbumo, he is
Yeah.
coming into the team where he has no monopoly on most things. Like, do we
Other than
think that
free kicks and
Soboslai is
set
just going to?
pieces. Yeah.
I hope Soboslai gives
Yeah.
him the set pieces because again, Trent is no longer there, so that helps him.
He's
But
on them
other than
now.
that,
He's on them now. But
yeah,
I still think
no
it's
no
like,
pens,
yeah, no
no pens.
pens.
Yeah.
And the XG's not going to be the same.
Mhm.
Um, and
New
like,
league,
yeah,
new
that's,
system. Yeah, it's just so many things.
and yeah, minutes probably won't be the same either.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think, as I said, so the bench boost one might be better, and like, yeah, but then also like if the the if you, let's say, have a strong bench boost one, you have a strong bench, it's more likely actually you're just leaving quality going forwards, right? Which is like, as you
Correct.
can see with a lot of the drafts that we're probably proposing, and maybe we haven't shown like a proper bench boost one draft. Like I think Raya Sanchez, we can change that. We can
Oh
maybe
yeah,
make
for sure.
and Nemeka, like we can probably make him an Igor Thiago, and it could look like a better
Iago, yeah,
draft.
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
for sure. But I still subscribe to my own thoughts where it's like, yeah, Thiago could be good. And honestly, a lot of budget midfielders and forwards could be even better than we think. But it's like, I probably would actually
So,
rather have some
mm,
time to assess that on my wild card too. That's just my personal opinion with the bench boost, right? But anyone
yeah,
who wants
yeah.
to bench boost one, I think is like, that's totally fine.
No,
Um,
I was thinking. So I spoke with 11ify about Sharda, right? Because
yeah.
he's a Brentford fan, and we also spoke about Thiago, and he was talking about Thiago especially for other games where Thiago could be a good option because of his price. And
Mm,
I asked him the same question. So there is a chance where Visa doesn't leave, right? He's probably going to leave. Like
exactly.
the
Yeah.
probability is more that he leaves. But what if he doesn't? Just like Ivan Toney. Like we thought for a season Ivan Toney was going to leave. He didn't end up leaving.
True.
It took him a season longer than when he did. So when you were supposed to, sorry. So again, it's just too much. Like you would just want to go into someone like Watkins and avoid all that hassle.
Yeah,
So
and
it's yeah.
that's exactly the point. It's like actually spending a little bit more money on Watkins is like so
Mm,
much better because you don't have like piss TV basically. Like
yep.
his pen share could be wrong, but he's like, if you
Again,
take that
yeah.
away, he's still gonna have all that EV, and he's gonna play those minutes unless somehow like there's a crazy move and Watkins is sold. But I also don't think I'm gonna price that in to Watkins. I know we discussed that in the group chat,
If he
but I
comes to
think
United, I mean I mean to be fair, if he does come to United, that does improve the team strength quite a bit.
tremendously,
So I
and
would
it
say
makes
that
Aston Villa pretty bad, I'd say.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, but it
So
makes
I mean
Malin good. It makes Malin good.
oh
I'd have to
that
jump
just
onto
yeah,
Malin.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot
Well,
of questions there.
other than the sort of mention of the soft pens of things, is Xhaka a better FPL asset than Anderson? I don't think so. I don't. I think Xhaka's like DEFCON numbers are pretty poor, as far as I check. Are you?
Also, I think it's also because again, like I said, Xhaka was the player in the system who was probably benefiting from Leverkusen's system,
Yeah.
and I don't think he's gonna get that at Sunderland.
Yeah. But do you think like his numbers, for example, for DEFCON are going to be good?
Oh, so I wait, just give me a second. I had those numbers because I forgot to include him in the chart because I think he's the only player of some importance who got added to the game later than
Yeah.
when I originally did the graphics. So just give me a second. I think I have his stats here. Yeah. Okay. So he is okay. So he is at 11.2 per 90.
Yeah. And what were
But
the, because
but
when
like
I was looking at the Leverkusen numbers, they were pretty.
So that's what
different.
I'm saying. Like I think
Yeah.
Leverkusen numbers might influence them either way. Also, I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe his Arsenal numbers are also influencing it because his role when he was at Arsenal was also recovering the ball a lot. So maybe that is also playing a part in this. I just don't. I mean, again, age is a big factor in all of this, and also his excitement to play with everyone and play against everyone is something that uh, I don't know how much to give weightage to his age and to all the other factors.
Yeah. Fair. Um.
Ramjak is saying how many darts to throw, total of 180. That's crazy. Okay, what I can do is, if for FPL Impulse's question, I can look at where Fulkrug is, and the next time the final viz I'll post before the season starts, I'll include Fulkrug as well, just to see
Yeah.
where he is.
But I think what's nice about Chaka is he can still take penalties and things like that. Like he can still be a
See,
bit of a freak.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah, absolutely. The pens are where I am thinking. So that's why I made sure I turned his pen share to at least 60%
Yeah.
for me to see where he turns up. We can go from there.
Yeah. But I think even on the point of like Xhaka versus Anderson, like Anderson averages something close to like 14, right? Career long.
I
So
think he
it's
does,
like
yes.
it is a bit different in terms of like the levels, I guess. Um,
Um, for MEFC saying league code isn't working. So the league code has changed, and I sent Fran the new one, so we'll update it for next week.
yeah,
So I just posted it in the chat for anyone who wants to have a look at that.
yeah. I've also changed that for next week. So
Yeah, you can see behind the scenes how good we do this, how it's done,
yeah,
how the
it's so
sauce is
well
made.
done. But yeah, I think that's kind of it, right? Chalaba, I think is a men's risk for sure. I don't think there's even a
Oh yeah.
question on that. Like I mean, I
What about Colville?
personally don't think that there's a Colwell men's. I don't like. I think
Yeah,
okay. I think he can get the one game like here and there, sure, but it's like I wouldn't label him a men's risk. I think that's crazy behavior.
no, I am exactly on board with that idea. I just feel like there's going to be that one game which is going to be too close to a Champions League game or like a bunch of games around that Christmas period or somewhere like that where he could get a rest. But other than that, I just don't see where how he could, bro. He's like so clear of everyone else at that club. I
Yeah,
just don't see why he
and
would be rested.
has pretty much always been available.
Oh yeah,
Played
yeah.
35 starts
It's a
last
shame
season.
that Fofana's, I mean, career has just gone
Yeah,
sideways because of his injuries.
true. Alrighty, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for
Yeah,
watching the stream, and we'll see you
absolutely.
guys next week.